Welcome to Fireside Gaming. I'm Billum, and our retro gaming journey this week takes us back to the world of Kingdom Hearts with a look at Chain of Memories for the Game Boy Advance. And I know some of you might be wondering why I'm not checking out Chain of Memories instead. I'll talk about that a little later in this retrospective, as it'll be relevant then. Also, I am a bit scattered on the story this time around, so here's your warning that this video will be full of spoilers. Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories was in a weird place back when it was announced. While everyone I knew was hyped for Kingdom Hearts 2, not many were giving Chain of Memories much attention, myself included. And who could blame us? This wasn't Kingdom Hearts 2, it was on the GBA instead of the PS2, and some gaming magazines straight up said players could skip it and still understand the story of Kingdom Hearts 2, which is a definite lie. In fact, it's only because of an acquaintance that I played Chain of Memories before Kingdom Hearts 2. When I mentioned that I wouldn't play it ahead of 2's release, he let me know just how much of a mistake that was. The next day he hands me a CD which contained the Virtual Boy Advance emulator and a ROM of Chain of Memories. And that's how I ended up playing the game before Kingdom Hearts 2's release. And you know what? I wasn't really a fan of the game. The card-based combat wasn't at all to my liking and was a real blow to my drive to finish the game. Heck, I left the game sitting for months at the end of Riku's story just because I rushed through the game and got stuck on the final Ansem battle. It wasn't until shortly before the release of Kingdom Hearts 2 that I actually went back and grinded up some levels so I could finally beat the game. At the time, I remember thinking that Organization 13 was really hit or miss, and I really grew to dislike them as bad guys over time, but we can talk about that in a later video. So now that I've revisited Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories some 20 years after its release, what do I think about the game? Let's get into that. First off, it's worth noting that Chain of Memories picks up right after the first Kingdom Hearts, and it does so with a full opening cutscene. Yes, this tiny little GBA game has pre-rendered cutscenes in it, which was an incredibly big deal back in the day, as in my brain was blown away by them, even if they're a bit pixelated. Granted, they really don't look that bad whenever you're playing on an actual GBA screen, which is how they were meant to be viewed. The story this time around has Sora, Donald, Goofy, and Jiminy still searching for Riku and King Mickey, and this leads them to Castle Oblivion. This mysterious location sees Sora revisiting his memories in order to unlock those that he's lost, or at least those that he's believed he's lost. And Riku is here as well, exploring the basement levels of Castle Oblivion with the help of King Mickey. This has the game splitting the story between these two characters as separate playthroughs, but they take place at roughly the same time, with Sora's story finishing shortly before Riku's. I'm actually going to skip over a lot of the story this time around, as it falls a bit flat. Basically, Sora and crew continue to travel through Disney worlds from Sora's memory, but the situations are always just a little bit different than they were in Kingdom Hearts 1. Typically, the Disney characters in these worlds are more focused on recovering old memories, finding new memories, or searching for lost friends. While these all tie into the story of Chain of Memories thematically, they don't add much to the overall narrative, except to stretch it out to much more than what's needed. This is actually one of the things that I dislike about Sora's story. In comparison, Riku doesn't have to run around triggering different cutscenes in each world. Instead, he can simply run to the boss at the end of each area, stomp their face in, and get to the actual story that takes place between the Disney worlds. When it comes to Sora's story, the main events are him battling Organization 13 members as he regains his lost memories of Naminé. In reality, Naminé is being forced to replace Sora's memories and his friends' memories by Marluxia, another Organization 13 member and the head of Castle Oblivion. Along the way, Sora and the group also run into Riku, but not really. Instead, it's a replica of Riku, literally named Riku Replica, that had his memories manipulated by Naminé as well. See, while we've been battling through worlds in search of our memories, Riku's been taking down villains in the basement as he tries to erase the darkness from his heart. This results in Vexen recording Riku's data and using it to create a replica of him. However, this replica, much like Sora, is dealing with memory problems as Naminé is also mucking around with its mind. No matter the case, both our heroes continue their battles through Castle Oblivion, taking out Organization 13 members along the way. This results in Sora eventually learning that Replica isn't the real Riku as Naminé shatters its memories to save Sora. When Sora next meets Riku Replica, it's working to protect Naminé from Marluxia, and he joins in to help. This sees Sora defeat Marluxia, and he and his crew agree to be sealed away in special pods while Naminé restores their altered memories. However, Sora promises he'll remember Naminé, even if the process will erase his memories made in Castle Oblivion. Not wanting to forget her help, Jiminy makes a note about Naminé in his journal, and Sora's story comes to a close. Switching back over to Riku, he's had a tough time as the darkness in his heart has revealed itself as Ansem. That makes sense considering he was possessed by the Heartless during the events of Kingdom Hearts 1. Luckily for Riku, Mickey continues to believe in him, which helps Riku keep Ansem at bay. As Riku continues to progress through Castle Oblivion's basement, he too encounters Riku Replica. This ultimately comes to a head when the replica seeks to kill Riku to give its own life meaning. Note that these events take place after the events of Sora's story. Riku defeats his replica, and as his copy dies, it begins to wonder what will happen to it after its death. Importantly, it doesn't know what happens to a fake heart. Riku sympathizes with his clone, telling it that its heart will go to the same place Riku's would. After all of this, Riku finally meets Naminé, who's in the middle of restoring Sora's memories. Naminé catches him up on what happened to Sora during his time in Castle Oblivion. She also looks to lock Riku's heart, which would seal the darkness but also take away his memories. Riku declines, saying that he'll defeat Ansem himself. This has him seeking the aid of Diz, a mysterious figure that's been assisting him throughout Castle Oblivion. Diz gives Riku a card that will allow him to summon Ansem from his memories. He does so and defeats Ansem, but can't completely eradicate him from his heart. When the darkness starts to spread, Mickey comes to aid Riku. Afterwards, the two talk about the fact that Riku is combining light and darkness in a way never seen before, and that Mickey wants to see where this will go. This has Riku telling Diz that he won't walk the road of light or dark, but rather the middle road that leads to dawn. When each story ends, the player gets hit with a blast of Simple and Clean, which still has such a strong impact even when crunched down into a GBA card. Seriously, all of the Kingdom Hearts music continues to hit hard even as chiptunes, making me love the soundtrack all over again. The extra new songs we get are also a lot of fun and fit in with the rest of the music. But to get back to the story, I feel like Sora kind of gets the short end of the stick in this game. Rather than really develop him as a character, he just gets his memories messed with in an event that he's ultimately forced to forget. It doesn't really work for me, as it's much too apparent that Chain of Memories simply serves as a way to depower Sora for the start of Kingdom Hearts 2. Maybe I wouldn't have felt that way if the story was told a little better. One of my problems is the game constantly showing the player what Organization 13 is up to. This takes away all the mystery surrounding Sora's fake and real memories, as we know his memories of Naminé aren't real. It just makes it really frustrating to watch Sora believe that his memories of her are real. Instead, I would have preferred if the game tried to trick the player as well, but it doesn't, and I feel like that's a missed opportunity. Riku, on the other hand, goes through quite a bit of growth as we get to see how he handles his own inner darkness. It's really good stuff, and probably the best thing about Chain of Memories. And in another blow to Sora, Riku Replica also gets a lot of fun development before his demise. It's really unfair, as Riku kind of gets better character development in both of the game's stories due to his replica appearing in Sora's mode. Sora and Riku also differ in playstyle as well, even though both of them use cards for combat. That's because Sora's mode really focuses on deck building and obtaining new cards from enemies. This can allow the player to create some really overpowered decks that lets them stop the Organization 13 members in their tracks. Both the player and the enemy have to use cards to attack, use magic, or items. Each card has a number assigned to it, and if the player and enemy play a card at the same time, the higher number wins. The one exception to this are zero cards. They can break any card, but can also be broken by any card in return. Players and enemies can also slate cards together. Doing so allows them to perform a special attack, and that higher number is harder to break without a zero card handy. The downside to this is losing out on the first card used in the slate. When players reload their deck, that card will be missing. That can leave players hurting for cards if they slate too many in a boss battle and don't have powerful item cards such as elixirs to restore those lost cards. With this knowledge in hand, it can be really easy to counter bosses with a zero card whenever they try to perform a slate. But bosses aren't as quick to do the same to the player, which can really make the fights a little one-sided at times. On the flip side of that, Riku doesn't get to customize his deck at all. This makes his mode more streamlined, as the player will have to work with what they're given in each world. But he also has darkness points to work with. These let him enter a powerful dark mode that has him donning the Ansem gear from Kingdom Hearts 1 again. This really helps balance out the fact that he can't customize his deck. Also, players can pick up friend cards in battle. Sora gets Donald and Goofy, as well as special friends from the world the player is in, such as Jack Skellington or Aladdin. These friend cards can also be slated for more powerful attacks and work well as fodder to get off heals without interruption. Riku only gets Mickey, but he heals Riku, stuns and damages enemies, and reloads the deck, making him incredibly helpful. Adding to that, players also collect boss cards after beating enemies. These are a part of a side deck and can only be used once per battle. Some of them have really handy effects, such as Oogie Boogie healing the player over time. It's not just combat cards that players get in this game either. There's also room cards, which let them control the type of rooms that are made in Castle Oblivion. For example, players can make Heartless in a room weaker or stronger, make no Heartless appear at all in that room, create save rooms whenever they need to, and more. The only really annoying thing about this is some rooms requiring cards of certain colors or numbers to progress. In some cases, the player will need a card that matches in both color and number, which is where I come to my biggest black mark for this playthrough of Chain of Memories. Late into Sora's story, he ends up needing a blue 1 card to get through Castle Oblivion. And guess who didn't have a blue 1 card on hand? Yep, this guy. At first, I figured this wouldn't be a big deal. I'll just run around the castle grabbing more cards from enemies until I get the one I need. The grind shouldn't take that long, right? 5 hours later. I finally found the card, and it ended up taking so long and so many battles that I was incredibly over-leveled for Sora's playthrough. In that 5-hour span, I went from level 52 to level 72, making the rest of the game a breeze. And while that might sound great to some, I actually hate over-leveling in RPGs as it takes away the challenge. I'm having my most fun in an RPG when I am under-leveled and only just squeezing by boss battles by the skin of my teeth. And while this whole experience may have soured this playthrough of Chain of Memories, I can't deny that I did still have a lot of fun playing this game. I really got into it and enjoyed the card combat this time around, both when deck building as Sora and the challenge that came from Riku's story without that feature. While the story is still a bit on the weak side, it does act as a good setup for Kingdom Hearts 2. The game's a little bloated with its 20 to 25 hour playtime, but that's nothing compared to the even more stretched out Chain of Memories, which can take close to 40 hours to beat. Now, to be clear, I have never personally played through Recon, but I've watched my wife play through it, and I have no desire to. It looks surprisingly clunky compared to its GBA counterpart and doesn't add enough to warrant the extra time spent playing the game. Also, Chain of Memories has some of the best sprite art around. It's a dang shame that it's overshadowed by the 3D models offered in Recon because there's a lot to love here visually. It does a perfect job at taking those 3D worlds and characters of Kingdom Hearts and converting them to 2D. Overall, I do actually think that Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories is a good game, but not the greatest. It is a real step down from Kingdom Hearts and is clearly a side game, but it has story that's required to understand Kingdom Hearts 2, which means you can't really skip it either. I do still think it's really fun, and I wish it was part of the Kingdom Hearts collections. Instead, it's still stuck on the GBA nearly 20 years after its original release, which is a dang shame. Someone should make one of those online petitions so Square will give it a re-release. Thanks for checking out Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories with me. And sorry it took me over a year to review it, considering my Kingdom Hearts 1 review came out back in October 2021. I really need to get better about not taking such long breaks between games that are a part of a series, but that's a problem for future me to figure out. So until next time, take it easy.